Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to our Childcare Funding Changes webinar, which gives a guide for employers about the changes to childcare funding. Thank you for joining. Sound's available through your web browser, so please use your speakers or headphones connected to your PC. It should last about 25-30 minutes, and there'll be an opportunity to ask the questions at the end. Please use the Q&A box to submit your questions, and I will go through them all. We will be circulating the slides and the recording afterwards, so you will have the opportunity to review at your leisure. And we have a poll online to take part to let us know how you're planning for tax-free childcare. So I will give it a moment for a couple more people who I think are joining now, and then I'll start. Oh, and please let me know, I hope everyone can hear me okay. Please let me know whether you can hear me, and I hope the sound is okay for everybody. As you said, it is through the web browser, so you'd need to use speakers or headphones. Okay, so first I just wanted to give a quick review of the budget yesterday and the impact on childcare. The increase in free childcare for 3 to 4 year olds from 15 hours to 30 hours in families where both parents work, or single parent families where that parent's working. That was confirmed, and it's going to be started in September 2017. Tax-free childcare was not actually referenced in the budget, but we did already have confirmation from last week that this is going to be launched, but it's been delayed until 2017. They've just said early 2017, so it wasn't mentioned yesterday, but it had already been confirmed that it would be available from 2017. So I'm going to give a very, very brief overview of childcare vouchers, but then move on to tax-free childcare and the impact of that on the existing scheme. And then talk about the increased provision for 3 to 4 year olds and what that means to you as an organisation. And then follow up with building your action plan and what you need to do in the time that we have available, and how to build an action plan and what that needs to entail. So starting off, I'm going to give such a brief overview because I'm assuming that most of you have childcare voucher schemes in place and will be aware of how it works. So it's a benefit companies can offer their staff that's tax and national insurance exempt up to certain limits. Can be used to pay for any registered childcare for children up to 15, usually offered via a salary sacrifice arrangement, and generate savings up to £933 per year for each employee on the scheme. Also exempt from national insurance savings for employers, so you're also hopefully making savings as an organisation. And if you do want further information about the childcare voucher scheme, please let me know through the Q&A box or by emailing afterwards, and obviously we'd be happy to provide you with more information. But moving on to tax-free childcare. So this is a scheme being introduced from 2017. Here's a very brief introduction. So it allows parents to put funds into an account, and the government will top it up by 20p for every 80p that the parent puts in, up to a limit of total childcare costs of £10,000 per child. So if a parent had childcare costs of £10,000, they'd be putting in £8,000, and the government would top it up by £2,000. By the same token, if the parent's childcare costs were £5,000 for one child, they would put in £4,000 and the government would put in £1,000. An example where someone might have 2 children. So for example, one is in a full-time nursery and that costs them £9,000 a year, and one's just an after-school club and that costs £4,000 a year. And so for the first child, they'd put in £7,200 and the government would top it up by £1,800 to make that total of £9,000. And for the second child, so it'd be one interface but 2 accounts, they'd put in £3,200 and the government would top it up by £800. So in total, their previous childcare bill would be £13,000 and now it would be £10,400. Although I've given the annual amounts there, the schemes can be parents can put into the scheme when they require, and every time they put in, the government will top it up by the relevant value that it works out 20% of the total, up to those limits. And the scheme will operate with quarterly entitlement periods. So a parent will be, when they apply, they'd be entitled to the support for 3 months, and then they'd need to reconfirm their status and go back in to confirm that they're eligible. So for example, the parents have to both be in work, either self-employed or employed, and have certain hours of work and certain earnings to qualify. or in a single parent household, that parent would need to be working. So if we gave an example, a parent who were getting TFC from January, and then in February one parent lost their job, they'd still be entitled to the top up for March, but then when they reconfirm in April, that's when that would come into effect and they'd no longer qualify. So moving on, so that's TFC and how it works. An important point to note is that some parents will lose out under TFC and be better off under childcare vouchers. So the good news about the launch date being 2017 is that anyone who joins the childcare voucher scheme before that date will be able to remain on the scheme for as long as they require until their child turns 15 or they leave the scheme for more than 12 months, change in far away as 2033. So there's still many years left of childcare vouchers being a great way to engage working parents and for working parents to make those savings. So in the following slides, we're going to show you how to prepare and build an action plan to ensure you make the most of that time and maximise the savings. National insurance savings. TFC is done purely by parents. There's no employer involvement and no savings for the employer. So if we looked at a typical childcare voucher scheme, we tend to find that uptake increases month by month, and the reason for that is that there's a natural attrition of parents who would leave the scheme because they no longer have childcare costs, they leave the company, or other reasons. But it's currently being replaced, and in fact, there's generally more people joining than there are leaving the scheme. So on the whole, you'll find that uptake tends to be going up, even with that natural attrition, because the new joiners will surpass that natural attrition. However, when TFC is introduced, even forgetting the fact that some people might be leaving the scheme to get TFC, there's still going to be that natural attrition, but there's not going to be the new employees joining the scheme because they won't be able to. So on the graph, you can see there's this bulk of national insurance savings that potentially could be lost by you as an organisation just through that natural attrition, for getting people who actually leave for childcare vouchers. And you can no longer use childcare vouchers as an important engagement tool. So initially, you need to assess who might benefit from TFC and who won't, and ensure that everyone's informed so that they can make the correct choice and that also your scheme is maximised while it is available. So now we're going to look at parents and the winners and losers of tax-free childcare. So this graph just gives a really, really basic overview, and it's looking at purely childcare costs and at what point tax-free childcare becomes more beneficial for a parent. So the annual childcare costs are along the bottom axis, along the x-axis, and the corresponding savings are along the y-axis. So the green line that goes through the graph represents tax-free childcare savings. So that works out 20% of the total childcare costs. And then where the lines meet is where tax-free childcare becomes more beneficial for that parent than childcare vouchers. So if we have a quick look at that red line, and that's the childcare voucher savings for a basic rate taxpayer. And as you can see, where the lines meet is at £4,665. And at this point, the green line overtakes the red line, and that's when the tax-free childcare becomes more beneficial for that parent. So if you're doubling the savings, so for two parents, that's the orange line, it's at £9,330 that tax-free childcare becomes more efficient. So it's just a visual representation of essentially anyone below the green line, in that case, is better off with childcare vouchers. Above the green line, better off with tax-free childcare. But obviously we know it's not as simple as purely looking at the childcare costs, because there are other factors to consider. So things like additional rate taxpayers. If there's one additional rate taxpayer, that family is not entitled to TFC. If the family is getting universal credit, they're not entitled to TFC, or if they get TFC, they'd lose that universal credit. And importantly, both parents have to be working, or in single parent household, that parent has to be working. So what I'm going to do is run through some examples, some real life examples of winners and losers out of the two schemes. And so the first one, they're going to be better off with childcare vouchers. So Will is a higher rate taxpayer and Caroline is a stay-at-home mum. And they use a nursery that costs them £300 a month. So with childcare vouchers, they're saving £623, so the maximum savings for a high rate taxpayer. With tax-free childcare, they're not eligible because Caroline's not working, So they're not saving anything. So obviously they're going to be benefiting more from childcare vouchers, and they should join the scheme to make sure they're able to carry on with those savings. Becky, this is slightly more complex. Becky's a single parent with a 3-year-old daughter, and she has an annual salary of £20,000. But she also receives £3,600 in child and working tax credits, which will be universal credit, and her annual childcare costs are £5,700. Now, on the face of it, her childcare savings with childcare vouchers are £933. However, with tax-free childcare, when you first look, it appears it would be £1,140 as 20% of the 5,700. So you'd think that tax-free childcare might be better. However, if she gets tax-free childcare, she'll lose all those tax credits. So actually, she'd be quite significantly worse off with tax-free childcare. Now, with childcare vouchers, there is an interaction with tax credits because the childcare element of working tax credits might be affected. However, in the example we looked at, the amount of that she would gain in the childcare element of working tax credits would actually be less than the childcare voucher savings. So she's still significantly better off with childcare vouchers in this example. And this example is based on the average childcare costs. So Laura and John are both basic rate taxpayers, have a son at a childminder 3 days a week, and that costs them £7,800 a year. So with childcare vouchers, they're both getting them, both saving 933, so total savings of 1,866. With tax-free childcare, they're saving 20% of 7,800, so 1,560. So they're better off with childcare vouchers. The next few examples are people who might be better off with tax-free childcare. So Kate is a single mother and a higher rate taxpayer, and she employs an Ofsted registered nanny costing £24,000 a year. With childcare vouchers, as a higher rate taxpayer, she's saving £623. With tax-free childcare, she's saving £2,000. So she's better off with tax-free childcare. Rob and Claire. Rob's earning £80,000 a year, and Claire is and she's earning £20,000 a year. They have a daughter in nursery, and that costs them £7,280 a year, and they also have a son who uses an after-school club costing £600 a year. So Rob gets childcare vouchers. However, Claire is self-employed, and childcare vouchers, to get childcare vouchers and qualify for the exemptions, parents have to be paying PAYE. So Claire's not entitled to the childcare vouchers, so they're saving £623. That's Rob saving as a higher rate taxpayer. However, with tax-free childcare, they are entitled to, because if you're self-employed, you are entitled to tax-free childcare. So with that, they're making savings of £1,576. So overall, in this example, they're better off with tax-free childcare. It's important to note, though, that as tax-free childcare now has come until 2017, there could potentially, in this example and the previous example, before that time, they could be still making significant savings. They could still be saving £623 a year, and it's actually more than a year. So it's still worth them getting childcare vouchers now to maximise the savings possible. So there are lots of variables to consider, perhaps most importantly their situation, in the sense that both need to be working, and if it's a single parent, they would need to be working. Other considerations, the cost of childcare. As we've seen, on the whole, parents with higher childcare costs are going to benefit more from tax-free childcare. On the whole, the higher the childcare costs, the more the benefit from tax-free childcare, and the more children, on the whole, are going to benefit more from tax-free childcare, because their childcare costs will be higher, and because tax-free childcare is per child. Their situation in terms of childcare vouchers, if they're both getting childcare vouchers, so if they're both in work and getting childcare vouchers, that can make childcare vouchers more beneficial. Their income, because if they're higher rate, then the amount they can get in tax exemption on childcare vouchers is less. However, if they're over additional rate, if one parent's over additional rate, they're not entitled at all to tax-free childcare. And the age of their children, because children over 12 are not entitled to tax-free childcare. So that's tax-free childcare. I'm now going to look at the increased childcare provision for 3 to 4 year olds. So currently, all 3 to 4 year olds are entitled to 15 hours of free childcare per week. And in the budget yesterday, it was confirmed that from September 2017, this is going to be increased to 30 hours, but specifically for parents where both parents are working, or again, or a single parent where that parent's working. So to qualify, there can't be a parent who's out of work in the household. So this is something that parents are entitled to, and they have to be working, but there's no employer involvement. So how will it impact you as an employer? Well, firstly, I think it's a really great thing, because potentially it could mean that there are more talented parents going back into work, because they're going to have their childcare paid for, they know, when their child turns 3, up to 30 hours. So it's going to be a significant amount of their childcare paid for, which could make it more worthwhile for a lot of parents to work. Also, they can still use their childcare vouchers to pay for their additional hours. So a lot of parents will be working more than 30 hours, and they can use childcare voucher to pay for the remainder, and they can be making substantial savings that way. The 3 hours are just in term time, so it's only 38 weeks of the year. So during the holidays, again, they could be using their childcare vouchers to cover their holiday childcare costs. But one of the most interesting factors is that I think it means more parents will actually benefit more from childcare vouchers than tax-free childcare. And the reason for that is that, as I mentioned earlier, you find that tax-free childcare is more beneficial for parents the higher their childcare costs. Now, if 30 hours is being funded, then that's going to significantly reduce someone's childcare bill. So they might find that childcare vouchers become more beneficial, because with childcare vouchers, you're saving 32%, with tax-free childcare only 20%. And it's just if it's a higher value that tax-free childcare is more beneficial. And so I'm going to show you an example of that. So if we have 2 working parents, and they're both basic rate taxpayers, and they've got a 3-year-old. They work full-time, and their child is at nursery that costs them £5 an hour. So their annual childcare costs are £13,000, and now that's not an unrealistic scenario. So with tax-free childcare, they're going to be saving £2,000. They're going to be saving the maximum. With childcare vouchers, they're both saving £933, so their overall savings are £1,866. So initially, they're better off with tax-free childcare. When their child turns 3, their childcare costs are going to reduce because of the 15 hours. So it reduced by £2,850 because 570 hours are going to be funded. So that's 15 hours for 38 weeks of the year. But they'd still be better off with tax-free childcare, as their total childcare costs are £10,150. So they're still saving, that's £2,000. However, when that goes up to 30 hours a week, so if their child turned 3 after September 2017, their childcare costs are going to go down by £5,700 to £7,300. So at this point, their tax-free childcare savings are now only £1,460, because that's 20% of that £7,300, whereas their childcare savings are £1,866. So actually, with that 30 hours, where previously they'd have been better off with tax-free childcare, this individual family's circumstances is that now they're actually better off with childcare vouchers. And this is quite a complicated example with lots of numbers, but what it really explains is that it's quite a complex decision, and it's not an easy case of looking at childcare costs and saying, at this point, tax-free childcare becomes more beneficial. There's so many different factors, and this highlights the importance of communication, of making sure parents are aware of the difference between the scheme, and the importance of 3 to 4-year-old funding, something that initially doesn't seem to have an impact on employers, but actually, because there's an impact on the working parents, that will have an impact, and potentially that could be good for your national insurance savings, as more people might benefit from the childcare vouchers. So in summary, looking at these different schemes before I move on to how to build the action plan. So childcare vouchers will be open to new entrants until early 2017, and at that point tax-free childcare will launch. The 3 to 4-year-old funding, the 30 hours confirmed in the budget, starting September 2017. So use that extra time to drive engagement in your childcare voucher scheme and really plan ahead. So I remember, in fact, when tax-free childcare, when they initially announced it was going to be starting in autumn 2015, and it seemed like ages away. It was last year, so it was a good it seemed like a good 18 months or even more. However, we found that it's really crept up upon us, and actually now autumn 2015 is very close. So now it's been given this reprieve until 2017, but that's going to creep up as well. So it's really important to maximise the time that we have available to really increase engagement with schemes, make the most of your national insurance savings, and make sure that parents are informed and the schemes are all embedded. So be aware of your employees' needs, be prepared to answer lots of questions, and also make sure that your provider is able to shoulder some of that for you, because there are going to be lots of questions. It is a complicated decision. So make sure that you're in a position that your childcare provider can facilitate that and answer those questions that your employees are going to be having. And then importantly, show your business that you're on top of the issue, that you have a plan in place, you're maximising those national insurance savings while they're still available. And we'll go through the financial case in the action plan. So building the action plan. So one really important factor is to think like your marketing department and really harness the power of data to profile and segment different employee groups. So, for example, what kind of tools do they have? Do you have factory floor staff who might have very different needs and very different equipment to office staff? Do you have field staff? And there's no one-size-fits-all communication strategy. It's really got to be bespoke to your individual employees and what works for them. Use things like surveys to find out their current understanding of the scheme and what they're saving, what their motivations are. Think about how many have children under 15, what's your existing uptake, and what could your potential uptake be in your organisation? How many people have children that are not benefiting? What tax brackets do your employees fit into? And then you can use this to tailor your messaging and the communications channels you use to reach them, and you'll see a much better response and better engagement. And it also makes sense budget-wise to have this in place, because it'll make everything more efficient with the communication that you do. So, and look at you, a childcare voucher provider. Make sure that you're getting the support that you'll need. What are their plans? Are they going to be delivering the scheme long term, beyond 2017? As we said, the scheme could be there until 2033. Are they going to be around then, still delivering the childcare vouchers for any parents that you have on the scheme? Their financial stability. A good thing might be to look at their D&B rating. And look at how broad their business is. Do they have other products in place that mean that they're not reliant on the revenue they get from childcare vouchers, so that if this does start to go down, they've still got other products that they're selling, so they've got other sources of revenue. So I'm going to show you an example of the importance of communication and how this impacts the bottom line. So this is an example of a company with 2,000 employees, and they have a 4% uptake of people, and we're going to assume they're all getting the full 243. So their employer savings, and we're going to assume that Tax-Free Childcare is going to start in January 2017. There's no date yet, and we're basing it on from next month, so August 2015. So between now and January 2017, they'll be looking at saving £48,000. Now, if we increase their uptake by 1 percentage point using the kind of communication strategies that we're going to talk about, and we increase their uptake to 5%, that has a massive impact on their savings. So in that 18-month period, their savings are going to go up to over 60,000. So that's an increase of over £12,000 within that 18-month period. And now I mentioned previously about the attrition and the fact that the national insurance is going to decrease when TFC is introduced. So imagine 50% of your parents leave the scheme when TFC is introduced. And so if you took the original 4%, then you'd now have a 2% uptake. But with that 5%, you've now got a 2.5% uptake. So you'd have an additional 4,000 savings, and that's additional savings per year based on that 1 percentage point uptake increase. So it's fairly substantial saving, and it highlights the importance of communication strategies on the bottom line for the business. So how do we achieve that? So let's look at some tips for effective communication. I've mentioned the segmentation and profiling of your audience based on your review, so develop key messages for each of your audiences. Create an annual calendar of communications, and this can be based around dates that are important to you as an organisation and more general dates. So, for example, if you had an AGM, that might be a really great time to increase engagement. Or if you have a benefits fair or a renewal at a particular time, again, those are really key dates. But there are also dates like things like the start of the summer holidays that are really key to parents. So highlighting key dates throughout the year is really important. And remember that on the whole, parents can join at any point throughout the year. You don't have to have a particular enrolment period. So you can find increase in uptake by highlighting awareness all year round. Identify anyone who's already getting childcare vouchers and show them how they could either increase their savings or maybe potentially show them the savings beyond children starting school, because one thing some people find is that parents leave the scheme when their child turns 5 and starts school, but actually childcare vouchers can be used up to 15. And things like after school clubs. A lot of people don't know that if an activity takes place on school premises outside of school hours, it will automatically qualify for payment with childcare vouchers. So this could be things like music lessons. If they're outside of school hours on school premises, you can use childcare vouchers. So parents of older children could make savings on things like music lessons, dance clubs, sports activities. Be creative and embrace technology. It's not enough anymore to put a poster up or give leaflets out. the communication strategy needs to be two-way and really powerful and bespoke for that individual parent. Parents need to know, based on their circumstances, what they need to do and what their options are. So things like live online Q&As, virtual events, webinars are a really great way of engaging parents. And work closely with your scheme provider. Make sure they have all the tools available and expertise, and use that expertise that they have available. Mobile and internet has completely changed how people communicate. Things like there could be a provider might have a mobile app, which could be a great way of increasing engagement with the scheme. So to look at a case study of something that is a way of making that communication two-way and engaging, is something called Working Parent Zone. So this is an online virtual event where employees can access information about childcare vouchers. They can go to different stands, find out about tax-free childcare vouchers. There are webinars, live QA sessions, videos, and this way parents can get bespoke advice that's really useful for them. So rather than just generic advice about childcare vouchers, they could go in with their individual circumstances and have a live chat with somebody who'll be able to talk to them about their circumstances and what will work for them. They can download information from there as well. And we found a really great way of encouraging uptake in the scheme by making sure parents are making the right choices for them as an organisation. So it also enables us to reach more employees and increase uptake that way. So a lot of companies have things like benefits days, which are a really great way of increasing engagement. But as you'll probably know, they can take a lot of work, a lot of resource, and not everyone's able to attend. So this can be a great way of supplementing those throughout the year. Events on Working Parent Zone can be a way of supplementing benefits days and really increasing your engagement and uptake that way. So the key takeaways here. So the free hours for childcare for 3 to 4 year olds are going to double from September 2017, and that does have an impact on businesses. Tax-free childcare is delayed until 2017, at which point the childcare voucher scheme is closed to new entrants. So there's more time than anticipated to plan and really maximise engagement, but there's still no time to waste. There's not a simple threshold where there's a choice of TFC or CCVs being more financially beneficial. It's complex and dependent on a variety of factors, so it's really bespoke to each individual's employees and each of their individual family circumstances. Use every tool at your disposal to plan and communicate. Maximise your childcare voucher provider's offering in terms of what they can provide you for that communication tool. And look at your childcare voucher provider, make sure that they're in a position to answer the questions that your parents have, to save your HR team the time. And segment and profile your employees to make communication plans really efficient and effective. And finally, this is just a little bit about Edenred and how we can potentially help you engage and build that communication strategy. We've been delivering childcare vouchers since 1989 when we invented the scheme. And so we have the experience and the wealth of knowledge to really maximise engagement, but also make sure that the information and education of the scheme is at the highest possible level so that parents make the right informed choices for them and that you make the right informed choice for your business. So there's the elements of working parents and making sure that they're engaged and satisfied with the scheme. There's also the financial impact and the bottom line, the national insurance savings, and really making sure that those are maximised to make the right decision for your business. I'll now be available to take any questions. So thank you very much for your time, and please post the questions using the Q&A session, and I'll be happy to respond. Thank you. Hi, I'm just going to go through the questions. Why did the government cut off TFC at age 12 rather than mirroring the CCV scheme at 15? To be honest, I don't know. That was the decision they made. I guess it was to do with when they'd anticipate people having childcare costs. But I can't say with any certainty why that was. And Aaron, yep, absolutely. We will be providing a copy of the presentation, including the graph, to everybody who attended. So you'll be able to have a copy of the presentation. Louisa, if people decide to use the TFC scheme, must they come off the CCV scheme? Yes, absolutely. A family can't be using both. So, for example, if one parent it gets TFC, then the other parent wouldn't be able to get childcare vouchers. And equally, you couldn't get childcare vouchers and tax-free childcare. It's an either-or decision. It's also a one-way decision because once a family has decided to use tax-free childcare, they can't go back to childcare vouchers. So that's why it's important to look at the long-term implications for a family before they make that decision. Louisa, yes, absolutely. We're committed to providing childcare vouchers for as long as we have parents using the scheme and as long as we have clients who are requesting them. Does the parent zone have a calculator to enable people to decide what's best for them? It's something we're working on. It's a very interesting question because, as I said, there are so many different variables and so many different factors that it's really important that when providing those sorts of tools, we're not missing anything. We're not making it out a decision of this is just the situation based on your childcare costs, when actually there are other factors that affect it. The other thing to bear in mind is that now the scheme's not happening until 2017. For a parent to calculate now would be a little bit redundant because their situation could significantly change before 2017. So I think it's something that's going to be really important, and absolutely we will be providing one. But I think it's probably better maybe a little bit closer to the time so that they can make a decision that's right for them at the time. Hattie, yes, absolutely, we'll be providing the slides. And no, tax-free childcare is going to be administered by National Savings and Investments, I believe. As I said, it's unrelated to the employer scheme completely. Can you rejoin the CCV scheme if you leave to go to TFC? No, unfortunately not. It is a one-way street. It's as soon as you start getting tax-free childcare, you're no longer entitled to childcare vouchers. Are they still looking to phase in the first year, and will it only be eligible for up to 5 years old? It will be up to 12 years. It hasn't been confirmed exactly how they're going to be administering it in terms of whether it will be exactly as planned from the start. So I can't answer that with any certainty, but it is up to 12 overall. Should the employer be involved in the decision whether to move to TFC or just make employees aware of the scheme? That's a really, really good question. I think awareness is key, and making sure parents are aware of the tools at their disposal. However, I think there's always going to be some involvement. Employers ultimately know people's salaries, their tax codes, and they're a really good source of advice. The government have actually said that they want to involve the employers in the decision-making process. So I think whilst there's no obligation, I think it's a great thing to do, and I think making sure that you're with a provider who's able to facilitate that and really help you to provide that information to employees. Ultimately, it's a parent's decision, and no one can make that decision for them. It's just making sure the parent has the right information that they need to make that decision and make it an educated decision. And I think employers absolutely have a place in helping with that. If parents have built up a fund and then switch to TFC, how long can they still use the vouchers? Indefinitely. Our vouchers, for instance, don't have an expiry date, so they could carry on using the existing vouchers indefinitely. It's the tax and national insurance exemption that's key. So they wouldn't be able to get any new vouchers because they wouldn't be able to get any new tax and national insurance exemption. But any existing vouchers, they've already had the exemption. So after they switch to TFC, they can continue to use them indefinitely. What will happen to Edenred in 2017? Well, Edenred, we're a reward and recognition company. We have a range of incentive and motivation products, employee benefits. Childcare vouchers is a very important part of our business, but it's not the whole of our business. We have a huge range of products and solutions for companies, and we have many, many clients of various different products. We're also a worldwide organisation. We're the highest rated D&B, our financial accreditation for out of all the childcare voucher providers, so we're in a strong position. We're going to carry on providing childcare vouchers beyond 2017 because there will still be parents who need the existing vouchers, but we do have a wide breadth of products that we'll also carry on providing. Is it problematic from a decision-making process perspective? The increase in 3 hours for 3 to 4-year-olds is to be brought in some months later after the tax-free childcare scheme. Yes, it's definitely going to be a factor that people have to bear in mind. So, for example, a child who turned 3 in January is going to not get the 30 hours until the September. So that's going to be a factor in that decision. It will make it, again, everything less black and white. So yeah, that'll certainly be a factor. Your working zone info is now up to date. We'll be updating everything. The budget was only yesterday, so we were waiting for confirmation of everything on there. And there's information on there now about September 2017. So we do update everything as soon as we absolutely possibly can, based on the budget. What are we expecting the take-up rate for tax-free childcare to be? It's very, very difficult to say because there are so many variables, and I could make an educated guess based on people using childcare vouchers, but that's only one part of the decision. Things like the tax credits, I'm not an expert, and we're not experts at Edenred in the tax credit provision and how that'll impact. Obviously, in the budget yesterday as well, it was confirmed that tax credits might be reducing for people with potentially 2 or more children. They won't be able to get tax credits for the 3rd child if they're applying for the first time. So that might have an impact. There are so many different variables. I think it's very, very difficult to make a decision. I think the key thing is there are definitely, and one thing we can say with 100% certainty, is that there are going to be a lot of people who are going to benefit more from childcare vouchers. And whatever that particular rate is, I think that's a really important factor. That there will always be people who will definitely be better off with childcare vouchers. How are the attrition rates likely to affect Edenred's admin fees for childcare vouchers? Well, our fees tend to be a percentage based on the total order value. So there's no minimum fee. So on the whole, whatever you order, there'll be a percentage. So effectively, the actual value of what you'd be paying would go down if the percentage that's being ordered goes down, because it is a percentage fee rather than a flat fee. So companies will never find themselves in a position where they're paying a service charge with us that is not proportionate to the value that they're ordering. So I'm still, if anyone has any more questions, we'll still be here for a few more moments. So please do let us know if you have any more questions. A question from Maria. So do you have to do the maths for each case to work out the benefits on each scheme? Absolutely. Each individual case is going to be different for each family. So that's why I think ultimately at some point we will have some kind of tool to assist parents with that. But absolutely, it's an individual decision. There's no hard and fast rule of which scheme will be better depending on circumstances. Do you think employers should position themselves in the process for TFC? Well, I think certainly employers could help with the communication, the education of helping parents make the decision. Beyond that, I'm not sure what their place would be. There was some talk of potentially employers being able to put some money in. The accounts that each parent will have, it doesn't have to be the parent putting the money in. It could be, for example, a grandparent. And one example that was given was an employer. And that could be a benefit that employers give their staff, is putting money into the account for them. Although there are no national insurance benefits, it could still help engage working parents. But that would obviously be down to each individual employer, and there would be certain financial implications. Whereas with the existing scheme, the national insurance savings, make it financially viable. There isn't anything like that. So I think it'll be down to each individual employer and their policy, their plans in terms of engaging working parents. Some employers use different strategies. So I think it's a very individual case by case. And yes, absolutely. The slides and the recording should be available, and we'll hopefully send that to you very, very shortly. Can employers still offer to have TFC as a benefit that you can do through the company? Yeah, as I said, I mean, there's no national insurance savings for the employer. It would be done through the government at that 20%, but yeah, employers can put money into the account for the parents. As far as I'm aware, that was something that was factored in and put as one of the factors of the scheme. Are there any calculators in circulation now that you'd recommend we direct employees to if they wish to check? The HMRC did say at one point they were going to be providing one, but this doesn't seem to have materialised. There are a couple on the market. There are none that consider every factor. There are ones that consider just the childcare costs. So there's none that I could say would be definitely accurate, and so none that I would outwardly recommend. But there is something that we're looking at. So hopefully watch this space and we'll be in contact regarding that. As a business, should we be highlighting the TFC? We currently have the childcare vouchers with you. Yeah, we can help with that. We can provide you information about TFC. I think until we knew it, now we know it's going to be in 2017, I think there's more firm positioning that we can do there. But yeah, I think it should be mentioned in the sense of the importance of making a decision that's going to benefit each family, and it also could potentially increase the uptake of childcare vouchers in the interim if people realise that there's an end date where they won't be able to get childcare vouchers anymore, and that if they don't join the scheme, they could potentially lose out. So yeah, I think that absolutely we could be highlighting tax-free childcare, and obviously would be happy to provide you with information. Gail, TFC is not run through payroll, purely between parents and government. That's absolutely right. There's no involvement of payroll whatsoever. It is exactly purely between the parent and the government. Parent applies directly to the government for the account. They reconfirm their status every 3 months with the government. There may be some onus on employers to prove eligibility, to prove that their people are employed and the hours they work, but there's no interaction through payroll. Childcare vouchers, no new people will be able to join the scheme after 2017. No date as of yet, it's early 2017 was the date we were given. But anyone already on the scheme could continue to get childcare vouchers indefinitely. And our estimate is up till 2033 there could still be parents getting childcare vouchers, because if they join just before 2017, they'd have that time before their child is no longer eligible. So, and they don't expire. So you could have somebody who joined the scheme just before tax-free childcare, and they could carry on using their childcare vouchers indefinitely. But early 2017 is the date that we've been given for when parents won't be able to apply for childcare vouchers anymore. Hello there. Just last chance if anyone has any questions before we finish. We'll be finishing in a couple of moments. So if you do have any questions, please post them. If you think of anything afterwards, or if you'd like to ask a question privately, then please feel free to send an email or call us, and the information's all on the presentations, and as I said, we will be sending that round. So thank you very much, Gail. But yes, thank you very much, everybody. And we will definitely be sending around the slides. And if you do have any questions, or if you'd like to speak to one of our consultants, all the information that you need is on the slide that's there that will be sent over to you. So please do get in contact if you need anything at all. Thank you.